All right, let's jump right into a really fascinating idea that's been making the rounds. What if Netflix actually bought the company that owns HBO? Now, on the surface, that just sounds like another big corporate merger, right? But if you look closer, it actually pulls back the curtain on this incredibly powerful economic engine that could literally decide the entire future of entertainment. This one quote really gets to the heart of it all. And I love that word, slap. It's perfect because it shows you just how simple, how elegant the strategy is. We're not talking about years of complicated business integrations. We're talking about taking one of the best content libraries on the planet, Game of Thrones, The Sopranos, all of it, and just plugging it straight into the biggest streaming distribution network in the world. Instantly. So you have to ask, how does that one move create such a massive, almost unbeatable advantage? It's not just about having more shows for people to watch. It's about a fundamental economic principle that's really quietly deciding who wins and who loses the streaming wars. And that principle is something we're going to call the content leverage theory. And honestly, the subtitle here says it all. It explains why, in this digital world we live in, being bigger actually means you get to be cheaper. I know, it sounds completely backward, but trust me, it's the engine that drives this entire machine. Okay, so here's the textbook definition. See, content has what we call a fixed cost. It's kind of like baking a giant, expensive cake. The cost of all the ingredients, the time, the oven, it's all the same whether you serve that cake to 10 people or to 1,000 people. Well, content leverage is that magic that happens when you take the huge cost of that cake and get to divide it across an absolutely massive number of people. Let's just boil it down to its simplest form. The more people you have paying for a subscription, the less each individual person has to chip in to fund that next huge blockbuster show. It is the ultimate economy of scale, and it is incredibly powerful. All right, but talk is cheap, right? Let's actually look at the numbers, because this isn't some fuzzy abstract theory. The power of this advantage becomes crystal clear the second you look at the unit economics, the simple math behind every single subscriber. So let's start with a nice, big, round number. $1 billion. That's the kind of money we're talking about to create a whole slate of blockbuster shows for a year. It's a staggering, almost unimaginable investment for any one company to make. So put yourself in the shoes of a streaming executive. You've just signed off on $1 billion check. How on earth do you make that money back? How do you justify that cost? And more importantly, make enough profit to fund the next billion-dollar bet? And here it is. This is the crucial shift in thinking. You have to stop looking at that scary billion-dollar price tag, and instead, you start looking at what it costs you for each customer. This right here is where the entire game is won or lost. Now, just look at how the math plays out. For Netflix, with its massive global base of over 300 million subscribers, that $1 billion cost gets spread so thin that it only comes out to about $3.30 per person. But now, look at a smaller rival. Even a pretty successful one with, say, 75 million subscribers has to pay over $13 for that exact same content. That's 4 times higher. They're fighting for the same eyeballs, but one of them is basically playing on easy mode, while the other is stuck on the hardest difficulty setting. And this chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? You don't even need the numbers to see what's going on. That huge gap between those two bars, that's not just a difference in cost. That's an economic moat. That is why scale is the most powerful weapon in this whole industry. Okay, so the math is just brutal. We get that. But what does this economic weapon actually do in the real world? How does this one simple advantage translate into total market dominance over the long run? Well, it's not a one-time thing. This cost advantage creates what's often called a flywheel. It's this powerful, self-reinforcing cycle that doesn't just keep going, it actually spins faster and gets stronger over time. And here's exactly how that flywheel spins. You start with that lower cost per user we just talked about. Well, that frees up a ton of cash in your budget, which you then reinvest into making or buying even more amazing shows. Of course, that great content attracts more subscribers, which grows your base, which, you guessed it, lowers your cost per user even further. And the whole cycle just repeats, getting bigger and faster every time. And this leads us to the end game. The company with this flywheel can simply outspend everyone else for the best scripts, the best actors, the best directors. They can offer their customers way more value for the same monthly price. And eventually they can just absorb the smaller guys who can't keep up with the math until they've built a near monopoly, not just on our money, but on our collective attention. So all of this leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. As we look to the future of all entertainment, what's really going to decide who wins? Is it the art, the single best story? Or is it the science, the company that just has the biggest, most unbeatable spreadsheet? Definitely something to think about.